Hello, welcome to Football Focus, your number one destination for the latest football news, transfer updates, match analysis, breaking stories, and everything happening around the football. If you're new in this channel, please remember to subscribe, share, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any important football updates. The Blaugrana sunrise, how Deco and Flick unlocked the ultimate dual swoop. While Madrid burned the Mediterranean air hanging over the Ciutat Esportiva, Joan Gamper was heavy with the scent of an ending, but heavier still with the electric thrill of a beginning. Robert Lewandowski, the mechanical titan who had guaranteed 120 goals across 3 relentless seasons, the reference point around whom Hansi Flick had engineered a blistering, high-pressing machine, had played his final symphony. The farewell against Real Betis was wrapped in tearful standing ovations, but behind closed doors, the German manager didn't deal in nostalgia. He dealt in absolute domination. Turning to the cameras with his usual stark, unblinking intensity, Flick had issued a blunt directive. We need a replacement who scores. No diplomacy. A ruthless number 9 who understands the system from day one. While the football world assumed Barcelona would retreat into another summer of cautious accounting and minor loans, sporting director Deco was already boarding a private flight to London. A masterclass of economic engineering and tactical plotting was about to unfold. A dual swoop destined to shift the axis of European power back to Catalonia, precisely as Real Madrid began to fracture from within Part 1, the boy who chased a ghost. In the heart of Madrid, a storm was brewing that money couldn't soothe. Julian Alvarez, the World Cup-winning engine of Argentina, had reached his breaking point. Despite 2 seasons of undeniable excellence at Atlético de Madrid, bagging 18 goals and 8 crucial assists, his trophy cabinet had collected nothing but dust. For a man who had lifted the Champions League under Pep Guardiola and the World Cup alongside Leo Messi, a sterile environment was an insult to his competitive soul. Atletico tried to chain him down. They offered him a blank cheque renewal, €10 million net per year, making him the highest-paid player in their history. Then came Paris Saint-Germain. Backed by Qatar's infinite treasury, Luis Enrique placed a staggering €150 million contract on the table. It was wealth that could sustain generations. Julián looked at the contract, looked at his advisors, and said no. To understand why a 26-year-old superstar in his absolute prime rejects €150 million, you have to travel back 20 years to Calcín, Argentina. You have to see a little boy staring at a bedroom wall covered in posters of a diminutive genius wearing blue and red stripes. For Julián, Leo Messi wasn't just an idol. He was the definition of football. And Messi meant Barcelona. The dream wasn't negotiable. It couldn't be bought by Parisian oil or Madrid's desperate millions. When Atletico realized his silence was an absolute rejection, they issued a furious ultimatum. Bring an offer immediately, or spend August in the stands. They demanded a minimum of €150 million to sell to a direct La Liga rival. Enter Deco. Knowing Barcelona's revived financial leeway, cleared of over €70 million in wages through the departures of Lewandowski and structural adjustments, the sporting director engineered a multiplayer swap to crack Atletico's resolve. Diego Cholo Simeone didn't care for fragile artists. He wanted soldiers who would bleed for the badge. Barcelona possessed exactly what he craved. Deco placed Ferran Torres, a relentless, hard-working forward who tracked back with manic intensity, into the deal. He added Marc Casado, a midfield dynamo suffocated by Barca's current depth, but ready to start for Simeone on day one, and offered a development loan for the brilliant young pivot Marc Bernal. The formula was flawless. It slashed the cash requirement to a figure La Liga's adjusted salary cap welcomed with open arms. Even Madrid-affiliated journalists who took no pleasure in fueling Catalan hope had to admit the bitter truth on late-night television. Julian Alvarez is going to Barcelona. The deal is too solid to stop. Part 2. The London Rendezvous. While the Spanish capital scrambled to digest the Alvarez news, Deco's black car pulled up to a discreet luxury hotel in Mayfair, London. Waiting inside was the defining market opportunity of the decade. João Pedro. At 23 years old, the Brazilian forward had just dragged a chaotic, fractured Chelsea through the mud. In a season plagued by 4 different managerial changes and structural anarchy, Pedro had risen above the noise, outshining even Cole Palmer to be named Chelsea's Player of the Year with 12 goals and 8 assists. But Chelsea had finished 10th. No Champions League, no Europa League. For a player of Pedro's ceiling, a year in the continental wilderness was unacceptable. Furthermore, Xabi Alonso's imminent arrival at Stamford Bridge signalled a tactical shift toward a completely different archetype of target man. Chelsea desperately needed to balance their books after a €1 billion spending spree, and Pedro was their highest valued asset on the chopping block. 6 months ago, João Pedro would have commanded an unpayable €100 million fee. Now, due to Chelsea's desperation and lack of European football, Deco was sitting on the cusp of closing a definitive agreement for just €60 million. Tactically, Pedro was the perfect symbiotic partner for Julián. He wasn't a rigid, old-school target man. Raised under Roberto De Zerbi's ultra-demanding system at Brighton, the Brazilian possessed a rare, intuitive understanding of positional play. He could drop deep, link seamlessly with the midfield, and drag centre-backs out of position, leaving wide channels completely vacant for Lamine Yamal and Rafinha to exploit. Part 3. The ultimate blueprint. Imagine the terrifying reality awaiting Europe come autumn. Flick's front line becomes a fluid, shape-shifting nightmare. If a rival manager sets up a low defensive block, João Pedro occupies the lines using his exquisite Brazilian technique to connect with Pedri's filtered passes. If the opponent dares to play a high defensive line, Julian Alvarez exploits the depth, chasing down every loose ball with the ferocity of a wolf. It is a combination built to echo the legendary dominance of the Messi-Suarez-Neymar MSN trident, yet younger, hungrier, and engineered specifically for modern high-intensity press structures. While Barcelona executed this clinical, methodical plan, a massive institutional crisis had completely paralysed their eternal rivals. A sudden presidential election challenge launched by an ambitious candidate named Riquelme had thrown Real Madrid into total civil war. Riquelme had weaponized a shocking promise to the Madridistas: Oust Florentino Perez and Erling Haaland will be delivered to the Santiago Bernabeu. Trapped in a state of absolute strategic deadlock until the elections concluded, Real Madrid could only watch from the sidelines. They couldn't sign players, they couldn't confirm budgets, and they couldn't react. The contrast was poetic. Madrid was frozen by fear and political vanity. Barcelona was moving like a shadow in the night, building the most dangerous team in Europe one signature at a time. The D belonged to the Blaugrana,